Thanks for joining us for our Tuesday education, every Tuesday around 12 o'clock. Today we have a model, and what we're going to be doing on our model is more of a triangular graduation, so a graduated bob. So we welcome you to join us for the demo, and if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. So what we've done is we've already pre-sectioned this graduated bob, and we sectioned out the top more in a diamond section, a little bit off center, because the color was changed a little bit on top. And what we're going to do is we're going to create more of a structured graduated bob underneath, and on the top we're going to connect it a little bit more freehand. So if you look in the back of the section, you can see that we sectioned center back, and then from that section we took something that's slightly a little bit more vertical diagonal. And the reason that we took a vertical diagonal section is because what's going to happen is we're going to remove weight, and then we're going to start to build weight on top of that. So we're going to remove more of a vertical diagonal, and eventually it's going to become more of a horizontal diagonal. So if you guys come on this side, you can see when I'm looking at the hair, the one thing that I'm looking at is that I'm not going to cut past the bend of the hair. Because if I cut past the bend of the hair, it's going to just stick straight out. So depending on the strength of her hair, you can see that it kind of sits in and it bends right around here. So we're going to take it pretty tight. So if you look at the angle of my cutting line right now, it's shorter to longer. And the reason that it's shorter to longer is because we're building weight shorter externally and a little bit longer internally. And if we comb down that first section, you can see how it just starts to sit on top of itself. Let's go through that one more time, just a tad bit shorter. And then our next section that we're going to take is slightly higher, right at the occipital bone, and slightly wider. And it's really important to work in clean sections, because if we don't stay clean, then we're not going to know where we're going. So again, our body shifts around, shorter, and we're going to work until we're a bit longer, following our first guide. So the transitional part, we were just talking with Amber before. We were practicing a graduated bob over there. And what was one thing that we ran into, the challenge? So there's a transitional point that happens behind the ear with the graduated bob. And a lot of the time, because we start vertically, we want to remain vertical. But if we remain vertical, what will happen is we'll start to build too much weight behind the ear. And once we get to the front, there'll be no sort of triangular shape because we already have all the weight behind the ear. So when we transition, we have to remember that our cutting line goes from shorter to longer, but it'll still transition shorter to longer, visually, horizontally too. So as we section, our sections start to get higher and start to get wider. And this is where that happens. Most of the time we want to keep our fingers tilted down like that. If we keep our fingers tilted down like this, what's going to happen is, like I said, that weight is going to build up behind the ear and it'll fall right about here. And then it'll give us no way to transition that triangular length in the front. It'll be too long, too heavy. So in this area, what has to happen is we have to come around and tilt our fingers around the neck and continue up with our shape. So if you look at my body position, what happens is I lean into that area so that I can get a little bit more of that hug around the neck. And then I work straight up. And if you you comb it down, you can start to see, even if we bring it out, you can start to see that triangular shape that's happening. So on this side, we have to remember always that our fingertips are down and our knuckles are always up. The thing that I'm also paying attention to also is the root. So you want to make sure that the root is coming straight out from where it lives, because there's not much over direction that happens in this shape. So if I start to over direct, I'm going to start to get more of a layered shape, and I don't want a layered shape. So because I'm graduating, I'm just working where the hair lives. The only thing that's changing is my elevation. So I'm gonna work to the top of the ear on this side, and then I'm gonna go to the opposite side and make sure I get my balance before I move through the front. So again, body position, lean in. I'm looking at the root and making sure the root is coming straight down from where it lives. And I'm lifting slightly higher as I come up and around. So now we're gonna come to the opposite side, and I'm gonna get my balance before I move through the front. So I'm gonna take the first section that I took out on the right side, and I'm gonna take that same section out on the left side. So what is that gonna serve me? What is that gonna do for me if I take that same section outside? Yeah. So I'm gonna have an automatic guide from the opposite side. And just like I worked fingertips down, knuckles up on the opposite side, now my fingertips are up and my knuckles are down. And still I'm working that triangular shape. My root is straight out from the head, and my sectioning is very clean. When I take section number 2 on the left side, what do I have to do on the right side? Yeah, so take the same section on the opposite side. Because the one thing that's challenging to get with a graduated bob is balance. So again, fingertips out. I look at my root, make sure that I'm not over directing. I'm just taking it straight out from the head. My knuckles are basically touching the skin, and my fingertips are out from the neck. And I will check my balance as I go. Section number 3. And then I'll also take section number 3 on the opposite side. What are some challenges that you guys run into when doing this haircut? Who's done this before? Probably just Amber.
Either elevating too much or not enough, or over directing too much.
Okay.
Or not.
So where do you feel like the challenge comes in with elevation? Like, what is it that happens where you don't know if you're elevating enough or too much? Does it happen in the back, or does it happen more in the front?
Mostly back.
Okay.
Or that's happening here.
So one thing that kind of helps when you're doing a graduated bob is to envision where you want the weight to fall. Because if you can envision where you want the weight to fall, then that's how you're going to know how much elevation to use. So most of the time when you're building a graduated shape, especially in someone that has a flatter head shape, you want to build an occipital bone. So your graduation, you want to fall where the occipital bone would protrude the most. So the reason that we chose that is if you feel her bone structure back here, her bone structure is kind of flat. So the way that we can bring that out more for her with something that's suitable is by creating more of a heavier graduation in here. So giving her more of a built-up head shape. If I elevate too high, then what I'll do is I'll miss the mark on that head shape and it'll still look flat. So if you envision that, you know, okay, I want my elevation to fall right around the occipital bone, then your elevation is going to be right at the occipital bone. So again, same thing. We're following our section, fingertips higher, knuckles wider. And here's the area where we transition again. You lean into your leg, fingers follow around the head shape, making sure the root is coming out straight from where it lives, and you're just lifting up from there. And you can kind of see the buildup of weight that's happening right now. Now we're starting to get a bit more horizontal, and my balance is pretty good on both sides, so I'm going to continue through this one side so I don't have to keep changing my body positioning. So everything follows the sectioning, and the sectioning is just there to help me create the desired technique and shape. So since my sectioning style is triangular, my technique is graduation. My shape is going to be wind up being triangular too because of my sectioning that's diagonal. So you see here how we start to get this hole. So a lot of people think at that point, oh my God, I just messed up. But the thing with the graduated bob is that a graduated bob is designed to have a slight disconnection from the back to the front. So that hole that you get in there is normal. If you didn't want a hole in that haircut, what other haircuts could you do?
If you wanted to do the same,
Okay, more of a bob with graduation, perfect. And what that would do is it would get rid of that disconnection from the front to the back, or back to front. So again, lift. See, right there, you can see your guide. Remember, our elevation is not going any higher than the occipital bone because that's where we want it to fall. So we get a solid graduation at that point, but we lift almost like a minute hand on the clock. Because the minute hand on the clock, it moves so much slower and so much softer than the hour hand. So if you just lift little bit each time, what'll happen is it'll give you more of an invisible graduation. So it'll diffuse that heavy weight buildup that we want. So again, my sections are still diagonal, but they're more horizontal diagonal. Again, combing it from where it lives. So this is what we were talking about before, Amber. We want to comb the hair exactly where the hair lives and where the hair falls. So that what we're doing is we're just lifting the hair from where it lives. If we pull side to side, that's over direction. So we don't want that to happen because if we pull back, we're going to wind up creating something shorter in here. So when it falls where it lives, it's going to be layered and diffused. So we want that graduation into more of a heavier one length. So the highest point of elevation is happening in the back of the head. We lift. Everything follows my sectioning because it's there to help me create my shape. There's a bit of elevation behind it here. And once I get in front of the ear, with my triangular shape, because remember, we didn't build up too much weight behind the ear because we wanted more of that weight in the front. So you see, if I were to leave this length long, what would happen is it would have made this length look square. But because I removed that length and I came around the head, she has more of a triangular line in the front. So we're going to continue with this next lecture. comb from where it lives. And again, come down and around. Cutting line still remains triangular. So you can see the shape that's starting to happen. So if you look from the side, vertically, you can see that bit of weight that we built up into that one line. So again, coming from where it lives. Lift slightly higher like the minute hand. And then also, one thing that you want to make sure that you don't do is cut this off before you're finished. Because if we start to cut this off and refine this before we do both sides, it's going to shift weight in different areas and we won't be able to check our balance. So let's come over to the other side. So I took both sections down on both sides so that it'll help me and reassure my balance again. So lift. Again, we get to that area behind the ear and we come around and we lean. Next section. Same on both sides. So why is it important, Ivan, to work in smaller sections?
I think it stays clean throughout your haircut.
What happens if the section's too big? Can you see your guide?
Yeah, you tend not to be able to see your guide. Sometimes you cut over your guide and take the biggest sections.
Okay. Cool tattoo. Can't hide it anymore. So again, body positions following the section. Sections higher to lower. So to lower, my finger position follows my sectioning. My body also, it was higher, and then I lean lower. And this is that area. Come around. Like a minute hand, elevation slightly higher. Come around. And this area is important to check my balance behind the ear, because if I move forward and my balance is not correct behind the ear, then whatever's in front of the ear will also be off. So we'll check that. We'll make sure that everything is sitting visually even, and then we'll come to the front. And sometimes it's scary because when you're in the front, the first section that you cut looks really pretty short. But what happens is as you travel up the head, the hair has more of a distance to travel off of the head, and the hairline comes a bit more forward. So even though this looks pretty short, that length, when we're finished, will fall about here because of the hairline. Body position will come around. And that angle will stay the same. And what we're going to do is we're going to take that same section and check our balance.